Imagine a world with no cold calling. A world where companies don't sell your data to other companies who want to pester you. At G4 Claims, we don't cold call and we don't buy a single lead from data companies. Oh, and if you're due any compensation from your car accident, you pay nothing to us at all. For full accident management support, including motor replacement, repairs and personal injury compensation claims, just search G4 Claims today. For help the way you want it.
So hi and welcome to this week's episode of the DW podcast. I am joined by Gavin Bain, who is a Scottish rapper, writer and screenplay writer as well, Gav. So thanks amongst many other things, may I say, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks, man. The list would be, the list, those are the nice things that start getting into the kind of depravity further down the list, but we'll leave it there.
I always find these things interesting when I get guests on and I try to describe what they do, because there's so many things to people's, persona in person that you probably couldn't list them all. But, you've got an amazing story, Gavin, and I'm sure we'll go on to touch that. But I think most people know you from the Scottish rap duo Silibil N Brains, which has almost taken over a significant part of your life. Is that fair to say?
It's a strange one because essentially I created Silibil N Brains in like 1998, and it went till 2005 before it imploded at the end of the story. And then I kind of like became an artist through that process, and then had this career as a musician and then doing all these other things and becoming like an artist across the kind of entertainment spectrum. But it's so strange that one little thing in your life can, but I guess that's the beauty of it, is that, in marketing and in brand building, they tell you make a bang,
Yeah.
And we were told that you would never sell. Like you guys will never make it. No one will ever want to hear Scottish rappers. We were told that we didn't have a story that was worth telling. And then we've went and lived a story that like just keeps going around the world so many times. I got a message the other day from my cousin in New Zealand saying like, oh, I was on the plane and it was on New Zealand Air, and so it's like, it's every country just keeps going around, and then it like awakens in a new country, whether they're seeing the Vice thing or the documentary or they're reading the book or whatever. I always get the fans always then hit me up and I get like, whoa, like inboxes just like full up, and it's like, hey man, like you changed my life. And I'm like, oh Jesus, like it's just the small matter of my life, but has kind of in a really cool way, if anything, the best thing is that it's like maybe a walk in a journey in someone else. Like someone sees it and they go, oh man, like I need to get out of this shitty job. Like I need to get out of this town that's killing me. I need to get out, I'm just going to go and take that journey. And that was it. That was really, for me, I look at it like, wow, like if that's done that to someone, that's magic,
So for those that don't know the story, Gavin, it was yourself and your friend Billy both met at university in Dundee, started a rap group, and at first you were rapping in a Scottish accent. And from what I take from it, you seen an audition or an advert for an audition in London saying, will you be the next Eminem? What can you be the next Usher? And you guys went down to the audition. I'll let you take it from there because I don't think I would do it justice.
Yeah, it was Are You the Next Eminem? And we had kind of like had a style develop out of rhyming with friends who were like, there was only one other group. There was another group, but we never really met them. The first group was called Ran Clan, but we never really, like, I knew one of them and I've since met another one of them, but like they weren't really active. And then there was another group called Melod Elements, and they had seen us doing it, but they even said to us like, well, your style's a bit too American. Even though we had like a kind of Scottish accents, we were doing it in a very American style, like that kind of like humorous punchline style. And one of them I remember had said like, it sounds too much like Eminem. And I hadn't heard it. We were like, who? Emma what? Like Eminem's the Sweets, And they were like, this was like 1998. So it was just before his single, or it was right about the time the single dropped here. And he wasn't like massive, but there was a thing building. and I remember going into like HMV and like sharing the headphones back and forth and just being like, oh my God, this guy's so good. But he was doing so much of what we were doing, like the style that but we were freestyling for people in our canteen, just making everyone laugh. Like we knew like the way to get an attention is to make people like, oh, like
Of course.
laugh at every
action.
Developing punchlines became our style. So in a way it was like a nice thing when someone said, it's a bit too much like Eminem. But then it was also like, we need to go. They also said to us, like, you need to go, you have to be more yourselves, like more Scottish, like get rid of the kind of you're dripping in the kind of American swag, get rid of that and just be more Scottish, so we did that. And it was a case of like, that there is like a start of a lie.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? And especially for me, and let me explain this, like why that was actually way more of a lie in many ways. Because I was born in South Africa and moved to Motherwell in 94. So like Kurt Cobain had just died. And I was like absolutely in love with my country. I grew up near the beaches, surfing every day. Like I loved South Africa, without seeing exactly what was really going on until it was really going on. But I also was super happy that a country is like freeing itself. Sure. And that some amazing stuff was happening. I was so like, let's not go anywhere. But we ended up, because of my dad's job, we ended up back in Scotland, and we ended up in Motherwell. Motherwell's pretty. Are you from Motherwell?
Yeah, from Motherwell. I'll let you do what you want, because we won't take any offence to it, I'm sure.
Well, Motherwell was like, used to be. The reason I was okay with moving to Motherwell was because I had sat up all night and watched the 1991 Cup final. Yeah. And so I thought Motherwell was like this. I just had this in my head, the Steelmen, like this is a courageous city of winners, and so that's what I thought I was coming to. My mom's from there, or has had load of our family from there, and so I was just like up for it, and my dad convinced me that we'll go because she'll go and play football and it'll be fine. And then it was just it was brutal. It was absolutely like unbelievably brutal. I came from a country freeing itself from apartheid, and the first time I heard racism, like in your face racism, was in Motherwell. Like it was I'd seen someone calling an Asian kid full racial terms to his face, and coming from a racially kind of heightened place where people are trying to change that. You couldn't do that. Like I would be like, whoa, everyone would step in and be like, you can't say that. But it was like normal, And the first time I went to Fir Park to see a Motherwell and Rangers game, our Motherwell and Celtic game, I was hearing people chant things against Catholics. And I was just like, whoa, like what is going on here? Yeah. So what have I come to, from like a war to a religious war to racism to like a town that has lost its source of way of making money, like the steel industry. Thatcher had completely destroyed the steel industry. So Motherwell had lost a lot of its culture, what it was about. It used to be a thriving place. Everyone was happy. And we came into that. And I had a more South African accent. If I spoke to you then, you'd just be like, that is strong South African. That is a South African accent. So I started to mold the accent. My dad's Scottish and my mom's Scottish, so I have a natural type of Scottish thing in my accent, but at that time it was too covered with Afrikaans, not Afrikaans, but like South African slur and like the speech. And so I was just such a target. I was dark skinned. I had blonder hair. I was getting beat up every day at school. I was a really good footballer, so I was getting beat up because of that. And it was proper hell. Like every single day was getting beat. I couldn't wait to get out. And when I had the chance I started training with Motherwell and had a chance to play professional football, I got beaten. I got jumped and beaten into like a really bad, intensive care, where I was just out, and I was kind of like, it was touch and go for a long time. And never mind like the idea of like being attacked and what that does to you mentally. It was like that incident had a residual effect that lasted so long. It basically broke my spirit. I was completely done confidence-wise. I wouldn't want to stand too close to anyone. Anyone was too close to me, I'd kind of like flinch. I was completely destroyed. as a kind of confident person. So when I moved to Dundee and I kind of met someone like Bill, who was like super confident, good looking guy, popular, he like kind of took me under his wing a bit, and I kind of started hanging out with the skaters and built friendships in a town that seemed like a little bit different. There was kids who wore baggy jeans, there was bands, there was punk rock bands. I felt like, oh man, like this is this feels a little bit, I feel like everyone's so different. I feel like I'm also so different. So and so when I started rapping, when I came out of hospital, I couldn't stop rhyming. I was seeing rhymes all the time because my uncle had put headphones on my head while I was in intensive care, and it was playing like Pac and Biggie and, you know, Nas and just like incredible artists, Rakim and Naughty by Nature and people like that, Bone Thugs and Harmony. And so you can imagine all that was going on in my head. So when I came out, I couldn't stop rhyming. So that's why I rhymed. I didn't even know what rhyming was really, but I fell in love with it, and I discovered the art and the art of freestyle. And so when I just started rapping in American, you know, at that point, because I'd never heard of anything like Scottish rap, you know. So when I met Bill, and it was kind of like he was also very heavily American cultured, you know, influenced. We were kind of like rapping in these weird kind of half American, half Scottish accents, you know. And so then when someone said, no, you got to go full Scottish, you can see like I'm coming from South African to learning how to speak fully broad Scottish to now rapping in a part Scottish accent. Now I'm like constantly changing, trying to be something else, you know. And now looking back, I wish I'd just said, look, I'll just rap and I'll just speak in my normal voice, a mixture of Scottish and South African. What's wrong with that? But it was like, you're just trying to fit in, you know, like as a young person who's gone through this now, you just want to be liked. You just want to be fitting into the thing. So when we went down to London...
The question, Gavin, isn't it? I've had, just not to go off on a tangent, but I've had people like Stanley Odd and the LaFontaines on the podcast, and they've almost went through...
I love both of them.
Yeah, they're great, and they went through a similar journey, and I think so many Scottish rappers will have, in terms of just coming from a Scottish background and rapping in an American accent and trying to find, you know, when's the right time to make this transition to Scottish. But then you've had a whole journey there, you know, you've got the South African part, you've got the Scottish part, the American, back to Scottish. It must really play games in your head as well. Yeah,
because I was constantly like, but it's one of those things with accents. Is like once you have an accent on for a while, it starts to become the voice you hear, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's a natural voice in your head, and then there's a voice how we kind of speak in a way that it's like, for most people, it's the same accent at least.
Yeah.
But for me, it was very different for quite a while. Like, I remember when I first kind of went down to London later, and we were having the accents. I remember my sister Michelle speaks in a full South African accent still.
Right, okay.
And so she was just like, I was just getting used to your Scottish accent. Now you're American, you know? Yeah, but I guess in our family, they kind of, I was also always acting as well. And one of the reasons me and Bill got off on the right tangent with each other was because we loved like movies, quoting films, playing roles. We were always acting, always playing characters, just for the fun of it, you know? So the Silibil N Brains thing ended up becoming like, a chance to play like the greatest role that you could ever play. When you're creatively driven like that, and all you can think of is, I want to entertain everyone in the room. I'm going to drop jokes. I'm going to be rhyming, and whatever way I can entertain you, that's what I want to do. You know, so in that regards, like Silibil N Brains was the greatest gift to us. You know, all gifts normally become in some ways a bit of a plague, but when we went to London, we went to the back of this queue that went round the block twice, and all the rappers waiting to get into this Are You the Next Eminem. If you think about identity, like you look around that queue, like everyone was fake, you know, like people trying to make it in rap. And I can say this now because I'm like completely at terms with where I am and who I am. And I've been this as well. I've been this where everything you're doing, you're putting on this bravado, this like, you know, like this attitude, this way you talk to people, it's all put on. And it might be because of the hood that you're living in or the people you're hanging out with all the time, fine. Yeah. But it is afflicted. It is an affliction you're putting on, and you become it, right? So it's a character. And they're all playing characters.
Gavin, I think that's a reality, not just in entertainment, but even in some, office jobs. You're trying to impress people, and you're trying to get to that next
Yeah.
step in your career, isn't it?
It's human nature. Like, we want to fit in. We want people to like us, and the crazy thing about rap that I think got misunderstood, like, rap was a way for kids to get themselves out of the ghetto, to sell drugs even though they weren't doing drugs, to make money, to make demo tapes, to get out, So rap was always a way of, like, bettering your life. It wasn't really supposed to be about, fighting other people. Like, battle rap's great for the ability to, like, do that with your mind, to, like, put your mind in a focused, tactical, strategic way. It's incredible. I still am a battle rapper to this day, the way I think about things. But the attitudes that come along with that, and, like, living an angry life is. And I remember being in the queue that day and just, like, looking up and down, and me and Bill were just, like, so, like, oh, like, so happy to, like, yeah, we're here. And kids just in the queues, like, heads down, like, like, attitude. And we just basically went from the back of the queue, because we were never going to get in. So we went from the back of the queue down the queue, just battling people for their spot, trying to get forward and just destroying people, I remember there's a dude who said something about, like, oh, you're from Glasgow, like, F off back to Glasgow. And I was like, let me hear you make those Glasgow statements when I smashed this asshole's face into a Picasso painting or something like that. But I remember we were on it, we were ready to go to war, for our belief, for like, we're getting in this place today because we came 15 hours in a bus. We're not leaving without, getting in there. So we got in, one of the two or third people back, we battled our way all the way down to the front, got in. And so you can imagine that our confidence, this is like 3 or 4 years of rapping every single day. And we created a game called Porcupine where we'd made ourselves rap every single minute of almost every day, like throwing words at each other, having to turn it all and battle each other back. We were constantly, our brains are like, when you do a sport and you do it every single day, like Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours, we put those hours in. So we just believed, when we got into that audition, we believed this is it. And we are such good lyricists, and we're so good at keeping time and delivery. But we weren't, in retrospect, we saw one group go on before us. They were called MI5. One of them is a dude called Jargon, and he's one of the best young rappers I've ever seen in Britain. Friends with Maestro, and that's how we met Maestro. But they were incredible. Their stage, the way they performed, like they like took the audition like hostage. They were like kind of taking them hostage. They had this whole stage show plan, and I was just like, oh my god, we don't have anything like that. And it was the realization of, like, there's always someone else who's got a better idea than you, And I was like, oh man, and it kind of broke me a little bit there. Realized, like, we're not quite ready for this. We're ready for battling people on the street. We're not ready to do this. Like, look at these kids. And they never got picked. They got kind of like, yeah, cool, thanks. It wasn't good enough. They weren't even good enough. And I was like, what? That isn't good enough? That is amazing, They were essentially the Black Eminems. I thought there's 3 of them, and I thought they were all as good as Eminem. Like, they were, like, incredible. And they just got told no and couldn't believe it. So we went in, we rapped for like 30 seconds, and they told us stop. And they just started laughing. And it was soul destroying. When you've worked on something that you love, like I got kicked out of college because I was making beats all the time. I become completely obsessed with the art of making hip hop, of rhyming, and then to have these 3 middle-aged white people who knew such little about hip hop. Eminem could have been auditioning, and they would have been like, sorry, not quite Eminem enough, so. So they just laughed us out of there, and it was so heartbreaking. We went back to Dundee. They called us. It wasn't them. It was the next dude we went to see. Called us the Rapping Proclaimers. And I remember, and when I tell people that, like, oh yeah, they called us the Rapping Proclaimers, people are like, oh, that's really, because Scots think of Proclaimers as, oh, that's our, like, they're like one of our greatest things, And I love the Proclaimers. I love their songs, but again, when you're in that, like, well, fuck on hip hop, and someone says that, it was like, what?
It's
You
an
know,
insult.
it was like gun shot to the heart. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
God damn. You know, because you're in this belief that we're cool. We're cool. We're like cutting edge.
You don't want to be these two specky guys from Edinburgh.
Exactly. And these like middle-aged white people just like, you know, Scots will never work in music. You know, it's like when people think Scotland, they think See You Jenny hats, they think
Bagpipes.
Groundskeeper Willie, bagpipe, Braveheart, you know, it's so annoying. You think of like what Scotland's done for the world, like created the telephone, TV, penicillin, most medicines, like MRI machines. Like Scotland has like done incredible things for the world. Really is probably one of the most technologically forward-thinking countries, you know, and yet like we can't play this game.
Yeah,
you
we're
know,
a Simpsons character. You know, it's
we're just a Simpsons character. You know, yeah. So heartbreaking, and so like basically we went through a lot, but we created these characters, and the plan was, you know, we're not gonna no one's gonna ever accept us in this game. Do we just give up? And, you know, like, I don't know. I mean, I probably would have just went on to make other music or just try to do the same thing. But I was so creative, like in my head, like nothing was good enough. Like I couldn't let go. It was like as an addict, I have a very addictive personality. So all I could do was sit every night in my bedroom, like taking fucking diazepam, trying to like deal with like sleeping problems, looking at like posters on my wall of like The Secret of My Success and like Beetlejuice, and you know, then an Eminem poster, and thinking like, what can I do here, you know? And I remember seeing The Secret of My Success again. I'd seen that film loads of times, but like I was sitting in my bedroom and it came on Channel 4, and I was thinking, yeah, what he does here. And that, you know, you've like that's again, like I was saying, like when you look at things now, I could see what that was doing in my head. I was just seeing like, I can just go and be someone else, though. I can just create a character who they think is sellable, use all of this talent, and then what? You know, and that question, like, what would happen though? It wasn't in my head. Like anyone I told that to, they were like, "You are crazy. That's just like you're talking like cuckoo land stuff." Mm-hmm. But in my head, it was like, I've just attempted to rob a fucking bank to get money to record. I'm not thinking correct here. Like I am totally outside. I'm going to do something dangerous and I'm going to end up in a bad place. You know, I was already there. I got kicked out. I was like going to get kicked out of my place I was living. Everything in my head was just like, get this, go after this. You know, I'd heard that call. The journey was there. It was like, don't just walk away from that. Like, you know what happened in the queue. You know how good you are. Like, if you just let these people tell you your shit, like, what is that? You're just gonna turn away? And then so I had these other voices in my head saying, like, do it, like we can do it, you know. And so I told the guys, and they just fucking laughed at me, and as everyone did. But a good friend of ours passed away, and so I couldn't be in the town anymore. I couldn't be in Dundee. I've seen him everywhere, and we decided, let's just go for it. Let's just try this. And it was always a case of like, it's probably not going to work. Like, this is silly. It won't work.
But to lose, you know, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be home soon. But the other side of my brain was like, this can't fail. So I had that like going on. It was like, because even if we go in and something good happens, any little bit of a positivity is going to be like amazing. Because like, what we got here? Like, what do we have? We don't have anything. So for me, even though like we're doing graphics, we're artists, we could have done anything with our lives, really. You know, it wasn't like you don't have anything, but my brain told myself that.
You wanted that dream. You know, why would you do anything else, you know?
Also, I was at a point where I can't lose again because like football was gone. I was coming from that trauma. So it was like, are you just going to keep getting beat up and just take it? So that's where I was. It was like, no, it's time to fight. It's time to like start fighting for what you actually want to be. You don't believe in yourself. I thought such low, horrible things of myself that anytime I recorded on a mic, I could feel myself becoming someone else, and I liked it. I didn't want to sit in my room thinking, like, constantly dreaming about what happened, constantly feeling scared and dying inside, essentially. Whenever I went on a mic and recorded myself, especially when I started to change the voice and becoming someone else, it was so empowering. It was like, oh my God, you don't have to be this loser. You can literally just go become someone. And so I was so excited about that. And, you know, one of my best friends, Ozzy, who was rapping with us, he didn't want to do it because it was like, look, I'm going to go study more in Glasgow. Totally get why you want to do it, and I think you should do it. And he was like, you should do this by yourself because it'll be huge. Like, no one will hold you back. You don't have to carry anyone. Just go and do it by yourself. And I just wasn't confident enough. I was scared. I needed Bill. He was good looking. I knew that people looked at him in a certain way. And also he got a call back from Polydor.
Right, okay.
That was things no one really knows. There's so much in the story people don't actually know that make it like extremely interesting.
Sure.
You know, but I knew that he had a certain type of confidence that when I was around him, I felt better. I felt like I can be someone else because I was never trying to be myself. Why would you want to be someone who's been beat up and has failed, who perceives that they failed at everything? Why would you want to be that? So Bill was a facilitator in many ways because he was quite cool. It wasn't hard for him to like throw on a different character because we were doing it all the time. So for me, it was like, actually, I was too scared to do it myself. And I thought, you know, with Bill, I can easily play these roles. I can play off him so well, you know.
And was Bill in the same mindset, Gavin? Was he like, yeah, let's go and do this? Or did you have to convince him?
Had to convince a little bit, but I think it was a case of like, just like me thinking like, this will be a couple months and then we'll be back. Because Bill had his girlfriend and he had a lot of cool things. Had a great job in the skate store that we both worked at. I got fired because I was constantly making beats all the time. But yeah, he had a life quite set. It wasn't really any need, you know, to lead that life. So, but I had told myself I have nothing else. So it was a case of like, pull him along, hope he eventually agrees. And then he did. And so when yes, I don't know if you want to ask another question because I'm in danger of like getting stuck
as he says, you know, you've convinced Bill to go. You're going down to London. He'd had this call from Polydor already. So when you were going down there, did you have contacts that you thought this is who we're going to target straight away? Or were you going down there thinking it's London, there's record companies here, we'll find someone?
The coolest thing that happened that I think for me was like, this is going to work. I recorded a track called Accident Prone, and I'd taken it around to like our friend's house and played it, and everyone was just like dancing, like wherever it was, like it's a big party, and everyone was dancing to like kind of Dre type stuff, and I got my friend who was DJing to play it, and everyone kept dancing at the same level, and I remember people being like, oh, is this the new M track? Is this new Eminem? Yeah. You know? And so I was like, and it was really badly demoed. It was just like Eminem was releasing a lot of leak stuff, so the quality on some of the stuff was low. Yeah. You know, it was like from his demos.
Back then as well, there was so many like illegal downloads that the quality might have been low.
Yeah, so people just thought that was M's, and I kind of said that to Bill and Ozzy and our friend Brian and stuff. I kind of said like, yeah, that's like this new American dude I heard, and they kind of bought it for a while until they were like, nah, that's like your style lyrics, and I was like, yeah, it's me, and they're like, holy shit. That's and so brilliant. I got when we decided eventually, I got Bill to rap on a track called Shut Your Mouth with me, and then I entered it into a Radio 1 extra competition, and it just won. And it was just like, for me, it was like, what? 1 minute where there's no chance we're ever going to make it. Then we win our like national radio. And so we were started to get, and we didn't even know. I remember people telling me like, holy shit, your song's on Radio 1. People were playing it on Radio 1 for like a week. It was like on rotation. That was what it won. And so then I had an email from a dude asking me to come down and asking us to come to an interview. And it was a junior A&R at Sony.
Incredible, isn't it?
And it was like, what? This straight, you know, because normally you would think you get like loads of things from smaller independents or sister labels or whatever. And this was a junior, but it was at the major department of Sony. So it was like, holy crap. So for me, it was just like, this is going to work now. Like, this is going to work. And so we went down to that meeting, and what we weren't ready for is, because we never kind of timed anything, and we never really worked on the backstory. We were just constantly playing with the accents, so staying in character, trying to do everything in the accents to get the speaking voice right. Because the rap voice is fine, because you like do it at a different place in your throat, but the speaking voice is quite difficult. In the early days, there's some footage on YouTube. It really is from the early days of what we did, and it's not great. The accents aren't there yet, and that's kind of what a lot of people see. But actually, that was like very early stuff.
And at this point, Gavin, were you decided, that we can't rap an American accent and talk in Scottish accents? We need to be American. At this point, you're thinking, that's it. We're California.
Yeah, because I remember when I entered that thing in the competition, I wrote this fake bio about these kids from like Huntington Beach. One was from this place, one was from another, met in Huntington Beach. And I wrote this little story. It was just like a fun little, I love to write, it's this little, like, that would be really fun if there was a group that had that backstory. And it was like not knowing anything about what I was talking about, just hearing certain artists who'd come from certain places, just making up something in the little bio. And I genuinely thought, with people hearing that song and then reading the bio, I thought that was why it won. And that's why this A&R is caught, because he's reading this bio and going,
that's interesting.
Yeah, cool.
And we're Scottish, you might not have got on despite the track having we
knew Bill had done this thing loads where we'd be in the skate store and he would just be bored and he'd be like, I'm just going to call a label. And we'd call up and you just say, speaking in Scottish, like, oh, hey, how's it going? It's Billy, I'm from Dundee. And it would just be like, boop, dial tone, And anytime we ever tried it, I remember trying it, your heart would be beating so hard because you just want them to answer and just put you through. And they'd answer and you'd be like, hi, I'm Gavin from Scotland, and they'd be like, sorry, we don't let anyone call up that A&R department. Like, are you crazy? But as soon as we started doing it in American accents, we were getting through. They were just letting us through. And it was crazy. It was all of this around this 2-week period of deciding, like, let's go for it. And then when we get that email, it's like, we got to go for it. Like, talk about hearing the call. It was like sirens all around, like, go, 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 like, this is your chance. And I remember being so nervous in that first A&R meeting with Dougie. When he came in, he just starts speaking and he's Scottish. And it was like, oh, no. Yeah, because our accents are so not right yet. Yeah. Speaking to a Scots guy was like, our confidence dropped because we're having to, it's when someone's Scottish is speaking to you and you're Scottish, like you straight away go back into like certain words, and he had said something like, I can, and then one of us had said, and the other one had said, can, or something like that, just like a natural thing, and he was just immediately like, what? So everything went downhill in that interview with him. And even though he liked the music, I just think he was like, where'd you guys, he kept saying, whereabouts again, where are you from? And we both kind of kept saying different things and we never had it together. It was all over the place. So we left that meeting and that we knew we'd blown that. And this guy now knows he's on us. There's a guy at this company who knows that we're Scottish. At that point, we just decided, like, I said that we can't do this half-assed. Like, we got to go in. We got to go full in. We don't speak to each other in Scottish anymore. That's it. We are here. As long as we're here, we are these guys. And then we created this crazy story. We gave ourselves like 2 weeks to create like an insane buzz. We blagged into places, spread rumors about ourselves, made crazy statements about ourselves, but at the same time we were doing things. We were in action mode. We were playing shows, doing crazy fucking shows that we had never thought of before, but now we were doing insane things on stage. Like, our whole thing was, anywhere we go, we steal the attention. Like, we're on a holiday. Every single minute that we're here, steal the attention from everyone. It doesn't matter. Any venue you walk in, steal the attention. And I remember the first kind of venue we walked in, Madame Jojo's. It was like this, and this was a major label audition that we had blagged on. We had called up a guy in American accent, just been like, "Bro, we're on tour. We want to play your event tonight. We're from Cali. and dude was just like, cool, headline slot. And we're like, all right. So we got a headline slot on a major label audition. So all the labels go and they watch these acts. And they were all extremely boring, girl groups, boy groups, doing like unison movements together. And I remember when we walked backstage, this just tells you about the industry as a character, like who the industry is, right? It was an open dressing room backstage. So
oh dear,
you walk in and people are getting dressed. You got really beautiful girls between 14 and 18 naked getting dressed, and dudes over here getting dressed, and it's like, what?
Not right,
it's like a different world, And I remember seeing this girl come out of like the back, this office area, and she was like, must have been like 14, and this dude come out after her who was like promoting the event, and it was like, holy shit, man, this is crazy, like it was really dark.
That's grim, isn't it? It's really grim.
Yeah, and there was so many things like that I saw over the time. I remember going to see, later on, I went to see this this girl singing, and she was signed to Sony. And I remember one of the dudes I was with, Joel, turned around and he was like, yeah, Sony's going to let her go. And I remember hearing this voice, and it was like one of the best voices I've ever heard in my life. It was like, wow, and I wanted to work with her voice. I wanted to like produce something with her. And they were like, yeah, Sony's going to let her go though, because, well, you wouldn't fuck her, would you? And I remember him saying that and being like, what's that got to do? Listen to her sing. This is before Adele and things like that. And that was Sia. And so, yeah, so Sony dropped Sia. She was on a smaller label on Sony, and they dropped her because for that reason. They gave her that complex. I don't know if anyone had told her that straight, but I think she felt that. You can't help be at a label. And you go to your A&R meetings, and they tell you sometimes like why, what they're thinking, And at major labels, they only sell 3 different things. They sell crazy, empathy, or sex. And if you're not one of those 3 things, you're not going to get prioritized, Yeah. So, but she's had the last laugh. Made exactly 80 million the last couple of years or whatever. But
she could have been there so much earlier if the world was at a different time.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken people. A lot of people say to me like, "Oh yeah, but like, why didn't you guys just do this or do that?" And it's like, why didn't Sia just stay there? And she worked her ass off. She made so many songs, but she had to go away and then learn that it's that it's not about being what they want you to be, like, and then come up with just write songs, just love it, do it for the love. I think when most artists get to that point where they just do it for the love and it's not about all this BS, then they become like greatness, then they become real good, but you have to go through this journey like to get there. So we hate it. We kept seeing stuff like that, and I grew to hate every single little bit about it. And it's not that you hate people at the label, because there's so many cool people you meet there. There's normal people.
It's a culture that's toxic.
It's what they have to. It's what the head A&Rs have to do. It's what they. So as soon as we were signed, and it took a while to get signed, and we had to go around and create these massive, bombs, like going into Island Records and freestyling, ripping into everyone, battle rapping everyone in the A&R department just to, make them all laugh. They wanted us, creating a buzz, And then when we got signed to Sony, one of the first things that happened was we got sat down and they were going through our songs and they were just like, oh, like trying to figure out what we could be. And it's like, oh, no, but you've signed us as this, yeah. So here's us, made characters that have got us this deal because that's what they want. They can see the marketability of how to sell us now, but now they want to change us into something else. They want to make our music for younger audiences. So it was unbelievable. And so it's like, I always had to fight for our credibility of our songs, and that no one else is going to write our songs. Sorry, because that's what happens at major label. Like, yeah, you guys are the rappers. We'll get someone else to write the song.
No, that's not how it works.
What? Yeah, constantly trying to get other producers. So I remember sitting in the early stages, sitting in with producers, and they're just like patting away, like big producers. Some of my heroes, and they're just patting away, struggling. And I'd be like, look, I'd put my MPC down. I'd be like, you know, and they'd be like, oh shit, you know. And so I knew that I was on that level because I wanted it. I wanted to make something great every night of my life, you know. And so we started knocking out like 2-3 songs a day, just like working at a level that I didn't see anyone else around us. And it was important for us and for me to like make sure that we controlled the music, because that was us being real, you know. Because when you're signed, everyone in the business isn't writing their songs. They're not making their beats. They don't know anything about what's happening with the beat that's being made, you know? They're just kind of being told. They're molded into a ball of clay to be someone else that they're not. And so from that perspective, I was like, well, I'm making every beat and I'm writing every hook and we're doing all of this, you know, like no one's touching our stuff. And so for me, it was like, we're realer than all these other acts because they none of them have any idea what's going on with their songs, you know. And yet the ones who were most passive were like, yeah, cool, I'll just sing whatever you give me. They would get further on. They would start to get released because
they don't seem like a hassle, you know, they're easy to deal with.
They're just easy to deal with. But when Sony and BMG merged later, they were all the first to go. It was like, nah. Because none of them would sell anything. None of them, you know. So yeah, so the process of 2 years making like 6 albums, touring all the time, doing insane shows, building up like a huge fan base just to get this record out, and Sony constantly dropping the ball, constantly like, no, we're not going to do, you know, 40 out of 50 DJs have said that your main 2 songs are going to be #1 hits, but we're not going to release the, you know, #1 hits if you can get them played. But your songs are all about, you know, fucking grannies, bestiality, swearing every other line, sex all the time, masturbation. Like, we can't get that on radio. And it's like 48 out of 50 DJs are saying it's a #1 hit. They're like, yeah, but we're not going to take the risk. We don't take risks.
They want 50 out of 50, don't they?
And it's like, well, man, wow. I don't know what to tell you. Like, we're giving you this crazy stuff, you know, that we don't give a fuck about this shit. We're making up mental topics to rap about, you know, just to kind of take the piss out of everything. Just so that kids will love this stuff, because kids would have loved it, you know. It's like, we don't want to fucking do this, you know.
There must have been some shows during that period though, Gavin, that you were playing, and it was with people that you admired, or total heroes, or really, really famous people that, you know, you're thinking, oh my god, I'm rubbing shoulders with them, you know.
Exactly. Like, one of the biggest things was getting the call. We had been on the road for so long at one point, and coming off the road, I had like a stress fracture in my leg. And we had been on MTV, which was a tough one because MTV loved the performance that we did. Like, I went on and the guy Dave Berry kept like quizzing us about our past. He wouldn't leave. Like, so where are you from? Like, how about really? You wouldn't leave it, you know? I'm like, oh, wow, this guy. And so I just did this freestyle thing, playing that Porcupine freestyle game, just did this freestyle and just made the whole crowd laugh. And we kind of got all over it. And that's how we kind of deal with things, is like, cause a distraction, do some like funny rhyme thing or whatever. But a lot of people saw that, like MTV, it was like, you know, it was going to get seen. And a lot of people who knew us in the industry, like, scattered around, like the people at Polydor, one of the dude who called us the Rapping Proclaimers, who ran his own hip hop magazine, who ran Hip Hop Connection. He was the dude, yeah, a guy called Dave Loeb. And then obviously Dougie Bruce, who was at Sony. So like, I was so worried about going on MTV because all these people are going to see it. Someone's just going to say, hey, no, wait a minute. No, they're Scottish. And all of Scotland.
I can't imagine what that's doing to your head as well, Gavin, when you know you've met Dougie Bruce at such an earlier stage. You're now signed to the label, so you're so much higher.
And he's walking around.
Aye.
He's walking around. All the time we're in Sony, we're like ducking and diving, like, oh, fuck, you know, like constantly at heart rates at like just pounding. And I'm constantly having to take vitamins, take things to like slow my heart rate and like, you know, deal with the fact that I'm sweating a lot because I'm conscious of like things, you know, like
constantly on edge, aren't you?
Yeah, just constantly worried. And I think Bill had a completely different experience because I think a lot of the time he was just enjoying this ride.
Yeah.
Because he just wants to, let's just get famous, get our cock sucked, and get the fuck out of here and go home. You know, like that's it. Like it's simple to him, but for me, it's like I got to make sure like this thing doesn't get, you know, I'm watching every fucking corner to like see where this is going. And just when, because we'd seen that there was like forums lighting up, and there was a lot of people from Dundee, people who knew us, telling stories on these forums. So if anyone Googled Silibil N Brains, which we eventually find someone did, but no one blew us out the water. But it was so, every time we got a call from management or the label to come in because it's urgent, we'd be like, oh fuck, they know.
Yeah.
And just constantly worrying. But we went back on the road. On the road was like the safety.
Yeah,
you know,
out
like
there, you're doing
just do what you do. Just enjoy having crazy shows. But when you're on the road every single day, 40 days, 50 days, that can become like the stress there, you know, because the numbers are growing. You should have had multiple singles that you would have went number one multiple times over by now. You know, they're talking about like a year and a half in now, whatever. And then we come off the road and we're so like at each other's throats because it's like, you said this would take a couple of weeks. Like,
we're still here.
Why are we not released yet? And no one can understand that our management. No one can understand why have Sony not released. And so we're coming up to our release date and we're getting excited about it. And then they say, oh, good news and bad news. You're not coming off the road. You're going back on tour with your homies. Because at that point, everyone believed we were best friends with Eminem and D12. And so D12 were coming on the road. So now we're going on the road and they're going to come, the tour band's going to pick us up in 2 hours. And it was like, fuck, did we just say we can? How do we get away with this now? You know, this is a very different thing, you know. As soon as someone sees that we are not their friends, this is over, you know. So it was another thing of like, another great opportunity that was like, fuck, we're not going to be able to take it, but we couldn't not take it. So we had to go and do it. So we decided that as long as we're cool with them and our label isn't there, as long as no one sees that they don't really know us, then it'll be fine. But as soon as we got there, they were on stage sound checking and we were at the side of the stage waiting to sound check. So they're there and we're here. And our team are down in Brixton Academy, like on the main floor, just looking up, like waiting for like, the reunion, you know. So it was this big moment of like tension and fear of
That
Jesus
must be
Christ.
horrendous. You know, it's a gig that you've dreamed of playing all your life, and when it gets there, you can't enjoy it.
Well, the cool thing is that we did, because me and Bill just went out on the stage and just pretended we knew them, hugged them, and it looked really good because I guess they were just being nice. And then we ended up kind of like getting to be fine with them afterwards. Sure. So the next time anyone saw us, it was like, you know, they're high-fiving, they're, you know, so it looked real from that point on.
Did they ever say to you at any point, like, you don't know us, or like, did they ever ask any questions that probed, like, what's the relationship here, or was it no?
Not from them. I think they just probably thought like, these are some dudes we've met once. Oh, yeah. You know, you're not going to go like, oh, by the way, I don't remember meeting you. You know, so it was very.
People are they meeting every night? That you know,
I know. And the thing is, we had met them. Like we'd gone to an M show years before and kind of went up and spoke to Proof after the show. But that's like such a fleeting thing. He was never going to remember that, you know. Yeah. And so it looked all right, and we got away with that. And then that show was probably the best show that we ever did at Brixton. It was like an amazing show. And then kind of things start going down. Something happened straight after that show, which was our lawyer was constantly after our passports. And he had seen some of the stuff online. So he was kind of telling us like, look, I know what's going on. So we're going to have to, you know. And at that point, it made sense for me. It was like the next delay of releasing was from me, because it was like, I knew from him, from the lawyer, that as soon as we release, if the record doesn't do well or whatever because of bad press of, oh, these guys are actually Scottish, they're pretending, they could sue us for all the money. They could sue us for everything we'd been given at that point. It was like, he was like, where's the money? Where's the million? Like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to, do you know what I mean? This is fraud, you know? And the reality hit was like, shit. So I thought, well, let's change it to a rock group, because we were playing live with a band and it was sounding so much cooler. Brilliant. So it was like, if we change this to punk rock with rap, the accents matter less, because in punk rock is almost cooler if you're British, you know? Sure. And punk rock doesn't have that like credibility of being from the streets or whatever. It's just like about the music. It's just about the attitude, you know? And we were really more punk rock, you know, like our attitude, everything we did was very fuck you and in your face.
Yeah.
And so it fit so well. And our agents were like, oh yeah, definitely. You got, you know, this is really where you should be.
Yeah.
So no one really was kind of against that move. But then it was like, it's another delay. And Bill was constantly like, I can't stay down here forever, man. Like, I'm getting to get married. You know, my girlfriend's wife to be is pregnant. Like, I can't stay here, you know? So that was the kind of downfall. I don't want to go into too much of the ending because that's a big kind of ending in the film, but like, that was the beginning to the step downwards. Like, we had done so many things. MTV wanted to give us our own TV show, but it's constantly like while it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, this kind of like thing has become a monster. It's snowballed completely out of control. And now it was a case of damage control. So while I just wanted to like fix it, change it, work with it, make it work, you know, because I'm not going back, you know. I think time was up for Bill, and it was like, you know, yeah, like
you've been on the road with someone who's your close friend for so long, and even if it was, you know, someone that you've lived with, be it your partner or whatever, if you're around someone 24/7, stuck in a van, you know, traveling around the country, you're going to be in each other's heads, and
living with exactly, living with each other.
Time, you know, it's
and I think as well, like the growth of two different personalities, you kind of come to realize, like, actually, we're not that similar. And also, by the end of it, like, I had grown the confidence I'm doing everything. I'm like, you know, I am this guy now. Like, as much as I didn't want to lose the guy I was playing, I was kind of finding a real person to be. Yeah. And so much of him was like, I didn't like, because I was getting away with murder. But I was just mostly focusing on the music, and like, I just couldn't break away from the character. Even when it was over, I'd made 6 albums. I was totally, but like at that point when it kind of all crashed down, and there was a big event that happened that made it crash, I got hit with like all the debt. And at that point, I didn't know what the debt was. And it was like getting taxed as a self-employed musician, but also getting taxed as a limited company. And all that debt just landed at my door. And it was like, what do I do? So the money wasn't coming in anymore. And I had all this debt, 50K plus debt of like that I had to try to clear. So I became all these different things. I was like using this character, became all these different things of finding ways to hustle and con to make money. But then I also kind of was getting desperate because I wasn't making enough. So I was like going to the sperm bank, whacking off to make money, or like taking old ladies out and becoming like an escort agent to make money. And all these things were just like not making enough money. And like the stress was growing and growing and growing. And on top of that, I'd lost someone close to me again. And all the trauma had started to catch up again. You know, like when you're totally going for it and everything's cool and you're being another person, it's all good. But when things are bad, your trauma is going to come back, and it's going to come back tenfold. Yeah. And it's because I was on so much shit to deal with like the stress and the paranoia, like when I'd go out drinking and weird shit would happen because I'd be so kind of stressed, and then I'd be on shit. I would just have these crazy nights, and it wasn't sustainable. It was like, this is dangerous now, you know? And eventually I had attempted to commit suicide because I'd lost someone I loved. Music was like a curse to me at that point. Like I couldn't deal with music anymore because it was like it was kind of like, I've made so much of you, and what have you done for me, you know? Yeah. So
I got nothing back at the end of the day other than a wacky debt and a lot of stress.
Yeah, it was really the toughest point in my life to come through that. And like, I think after I came out of the hospital that time, like there was a part of him, this character that I was playing, because at one point I could only hear that voice. I started to like forget my real history, which is in a way something like what I wanted. Yeah. Because I remember someone close telling me like, you know, dump this character, just come back to the fucking real world, you know? And I would just immediately think, what real world?
Yeah.
You know, I don't want my old real world. You know, that's hell to me. You know, so I was
If you're in
like,
this dark place and you're in hospital, for example, are you still going on with the American accent if you're speaking to the nurses and the doctors, or are you
when
can't
I
stop it?
well, when I first woke up from that, my sister was there, so it was just it was the first time that the Scottish voice kind of came back a little bit, and my sister was just like, "It's time to go home," you know, like drop this shit,
She means
you know.
home. It's not like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's time to go back to Scotland, like, and I just I couldn't let go of the. I was always like at first I was like, I'm starting to think more like me here, but then this clarity is actually maybe good because maybe I can like get something really going. Like I came off everything that I was on, and I kind of started to hear music a little bit differently. Everything started to feel a little bit better, you know, clearer, you know. And then I managed to con myself into having a really good job using the character still, but it felt a little different because it was like I'm being closer to me. You know, it was this process of getting closer to who I really am, but also a process of finding someone that I wanted to be, because this guy was me as an entertainer, as a ballsy go out there and fucking do it. He was what I wanted to be, and I didn't want to lose all of that, and yet I wanted to find someone, you know, like to become someone you really become someone original who you really like being with.
yeah.
Maybe have to go through a lot of versions, and I'd gone through all these versions, and I was finding someone. You know, I didn't have a lot of the bad influence anymore. I was just hanging out with my best friend Rob, and it was kind of started to be a little bit nice again. And then a close friend of ours, Ivan, had got this rare brain cancer, and it was like I was just starting to make music again. And so I was like, no, like he was struggling to make the treatment. So me and Rob had decided, like, let's throw like a show to raise money for his treatment. And it became an incentive to like get back to music, use music for good, like actually do something with your talent that you can, you know, save your friend here, you know, like, so it was another call to action, you know.
And I suppose, you know, you touched on that. Since then, Gavin, you've brought out the film, you know, the great hip hop's Hoax. So you've also brought out your book, California Scheming. And I suppose that as much as you've had such a negative experience, you've also had a positive, and it's changed your life completely, hasn't it? I think before we were recording, you said, you know, I can't look back with too many regrets.
Yeah, because like like you have to consider negative, like as in calculating how much negative I was going through. And like times were better in Dundee. Things were great. I met great friends, but I had this desire and this hole that wasn't being filled. So whenever I was alone, I was in pain, you know.
Yeah.
Like I had a beautiful girlfriend, a great friends, but like something was painful, was hurting. You know, it was like this desire to like want to impress your parents, want to do something great to put our family back together, like to make everything right, you know. And that was a huge drive. So unless I was doing that, unless I was working towards that, I couldn't be happy. And that was the thing that was very hard for family and friends to understand. Like, what is driving this dude? Like, and I was like, it's this desire to be someone that's worthy of attention, to be someone that's worthy of inspiring people, you know, to actually just wake up and feel like, I'm all right.
Yeah.
You know, like a simple thing like that, it can be quite huge. But I wasn't like that. I was in such pain before. So doing the being this other character for a little while, you know, and even just giving completely into him, it allowed me to like develop someone else's problems, to like, you know, the problem of, God, I got to make 50 grand, you know, or the problem of, we got to go out and make 50,000 fans or the label wouldn't release it. Bang, do it in 4 weeks. Like the problem solving and the abilities that I was like developing, when I look back, is just like, look at the shit you did. I really can't look back at the 2 years of being signed and the 3 years before that as like anything other than how quick all the positives, really. It was only really negative for like 15% of that time because of like, you know, the paranoia and things taking its toll. And that's got a lot to do with just like starting out and not knowing where you're going, you know, because you're young and you don't know what you're doing. Like we were just running on adrenaline the whole time, and there's only so far that's going to carry you. But I think to be able to come clean the way I did on stage at Ivan's show, for the show for Ivan, I think it was heartbreaking because Ivan didn't make it. So it was I just knew I couldn't be this fake person anymore, or this fake persona, not really a fake person, because I was becoming someone. I knew I had to like put the fork in the ground and just go, all right, it's time now that you just kind of say who you are, be who you are. And so like just being able to say on stage, like, I'm Gavin Bain, like I've never been to America, you know, like I'm a South African dude.
I remember
who's
seeing
Scottish.
it, and the guitarist is there, your guitarist, and he doesn't even know.
No, he's just like, what? You know?
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it was really a huge moment for me. It was a moment that it was like, okay, like actually after that show, I started writing straight away, and I felt like, holy shit, you're a writer. You are so like, this is what you know. So I kind of discovered like, oh shit, I do have a purpose. I am this is what I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it was like just that idea of being okay with the journey, like the journey towards becoming, you know, something that you want to be it should be tough, and there should be a monster along the way that you have to conquer. You know, it's that Campbell, you know, the person with 1,000 faces or whatever. It's like that journey, the hero's journey to like find who you really are. It shouldn't be easy. If it's easy, you're probably not on it, you know?
I think when you've come out and you've told everyone this, there must be some people there, Gavin, that you feel that you've let down because they've absolutely loved your character. But on the other side, in hindsight, many years on, I think people look at your story, especially when they've seen something like the Vice feature or when they've seen the film or read the book, and they think, that's incredible that these two boys done that. You know, like, it's amazing in itself. It's a talent. And I think a lot of that comes down to your character and probably Billy's as well, and the fact that you are hard working and you wanted to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, God, the amount of time I spent in the studio, and I think that was a big problem that ended up being between Bill and I, because like we were just recording, and I think he was just like, why are we just recording? Like, they're not releasing any. Like, and it's like, because I'm a musician, you know, because I'm addicted to making music, because this is the life I want. I want to be able to feel something and then touch a keyboard and create how I feel. Like, that's how I deal with things. And when you're young and you don't know that, like, there is that power to just pick up a pen and write how you feel and smooth out the edges of the cuts in your mind. Like, it's a powerful thing. And I think that's the process. Like, when you start music, like, you're just doing surface stuff. You're not really tapping into like who you really are. But it's when you start to realize, oh no, I can actually sing about things I'm really going through, and that's gonna like touch people's hearts. That when I did the Hopeless Heroic after Silibil N Brains, it was so much better for me, because it was like, I loved all the beats I made for for Silibil N Brains, and I loved I loved being funny, and I do love still doing that stuff every now and then. But being able to make songs about real things, you know, like one of the first songs I wrote was about the life and times of the Washington sniper and the last few hours of his life, and then another song was about a kid in Papua New Guinea who was taking on American soldiers, fighting off, you know, an American army, you know. So like being able to like actually tap into the real world, and then also tell my story through an album. Like, so I can't begrudge any of the negative, because it's like out of that comes real story. And as a writer, you know, there's just the people that I've met, even outside of my story, and since, like, the people that I've met, the stories that I've seen and been a part of, that isn't just even this story, is like, it's given me work for 50 years, you know. It's like I'll just be creating all the time.
You must have people constantly coming back to you and saying, for example, this podcast, but even from all around the world, people saying, tell me that story again, I just don't get how you've done it.
Well, the crazy thing is like, there's so many different ways to tell it as well. Like, I've written a lot of different screenplays and stage plays, and like, I've written a story which is just basically told from all of our best performances, the craziest performances, because there's a subtext that happens outside of those songs. And that's a really cool way to make a stage play, you know? And so I've also done just experimenting with I wrote a whole story called LA Underground, which is not my story, but I wrote it as a way to see how good I could write my story. But I wanted to deal with like fiction. I don't want to write my story because it's too much pressure to deal with reality. So I went away and I wrote an entire story based on what would happen to our, if our story happened in America. And it was so much fun doing that, you know?
Fun.
So it's just all these cool things that you can do when you actually land in the place where it's like, I'm an artist. Like nothing limits me now, you know? And it's given me a whole other career, like of understanding marketing. People come to me for advice in marketing. I train rappers now as well. I teach creative writing, like, and I write, and it's like it's a pretty much full-time creative job, you know? Like I never needed to go back and work in a call center, or like never needed to do that. I just always decided I will make an entire life from my art. You know, I'll live crazy stories and I'll tell them, you know.
That and then a dream come true, Gavin. You know,
that was my dream. It was like when I was a kid, I'd seen stuff like that, and there's a thing that I've always been really close to my dreams, because I've been lucid dreaming since I was very young, and so I used to have extremely visual dreams. Sometimes I'd have dreams of people who died, and then they did die. I met Bill in a dream before I met him. And so that's one of the first reasons that I actually spoke to him, is because I recognized him from a dream. I'd seen the dream of us playing on stage with M and D12. I'd seen that perfectly in a dream, and I'd drawn it in a rhyme book. I'd drawn what Brixton looked like before I was ever in Brixton Academy. So there's a weird relationship that I always had in my dreams, that I have a dream, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm just going to go. And it's going to be crazy. It's going to probably be so many bad decisions. It's going to be so messed up. But the reality in that dream is going to come true. Whether that's a good thing, sure. Maybe it's a nightmare, you know, at least I'm living the dreams. I think it's a mistake to want life to be easy. I actually don't. I have a thing now where for a few years, I decided to have this thing just for me to be happy. As someone who's kind of like a little bit of an anti-capitalist, I'm happy with making money, and I can only make money if it's from art I've created, you know, like things I've written, things I've created with my own mind. Then I'm happy to make money from it. And that's kind of just my game that I play, because I think it's so easy to go out and just do something.
Part of that as well, Gavin, is maybe you've been true to yourself, because you've had this identity question hanging over you for so many years. This is exactly what you want to do, and you will do that going forward for the rest of your life. That's
and I think
it's as a person and as an artist. And
I think it's being honest with who you really are. You know, it's like I've taken a road that's forced me to be all the different types of dishonest, but in a way that kind of reverse constructs, you know, reverse engineers who you really are, you know, from all these different things. So you get to a point when you're constantly unhappy, and you eventually go, that's why I'm unhappy. That's why I'm happy. Great. Okay. And you go, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to only do my art. I'm choosing this now, and I'm not going to come off. It doesn't matter if I die. It doesn't matter if I die broke. I'm going to only do this. Yeah. And there's something about when you just like, anyone can try that. The day after they quit their job and they sit in their couch it'll be very scary. But there's a moment where you're like, wow, fuck. Yeah. Like I'm doing this now, you know? Totally. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything more empowering to the human mind than that, you know, than to make that decision. Yeah, the other day I learned something in music for the first time. I've been doing music for like 20 years in production and in mixing, that totally changed the entire way I look at making music. And since then, I've just been having so much fun making music now. It's like it's you're still constantly learning. As long as the bad way to look at getting better and becoming good in music is that idea of I want to be the best. Yeah. That is the quickest slope to being shit. As soon as you think that you've got to where you got to a point where I'm really good, you're now shit. That's the bottom line.
As well, aren't you?
Well, you can't go any further. That's the problem. Like, And also, so where you're at, where you're settling at now, where you're going to, rest your shield on, that's how good you want to be. Like, for me, it is always like, nah, I'm nowhere near it. And I think as long as you constantly look at it, like, I can get so much better because there's so much out there that I don't know.
Sure.
Like, then you're always going to climb, and it stops being about what anyone else is doing. Like, oh, these guys are making this, or like trends. Yeah. None of that matters, because you're always going to learn more about yourself and then do it, So I think that's the way to be, like, creatively content. And it's a road that I'm on, and I'm starting to feel pretty good about.
You've obviously stayed in the creative industries, and I think as much as it's a massive industry in itself, it's quite small in terms of a lot of people know each other, and it's the same people that are kicking around each and time again. But did you feel that you ever burnt any bridges when you came away from that and you came out and you told the truth? Did you think, I can't really cross that line again, I can't work with them? Or did you feel that they almost admired you even more for it?
I totally burnt bridges, but the thing about when you're an artist and you're going to do what you're going to do, and you're going to keep doing it, and you're just going to make music, or you're just going to write, you're just going to do it for the love of it, you're always going to win, because the average job range of someone in A&R is 6 months. So 6 months and there's a new group of A&Rs, so they just lose their jobs all the time. Like, it's not a safe job working at a label, especially with the industry the way it is. So, like, the worst thing that you probably could ever do is go to try and get a label deal. Just do your shit, and if they come, fine, they come. But, like, do your thing. Like, they don't like anyone coming to them. Legally, they can't actually work with anyone who's coming to them. They have to come and find it. But it's just this idea, like, when you're doing what you absolutely love, it doesn't matter about what others think. There's been people at labels who have, sure, they've been like, like, so maybe Sony as a company, that at the top, they might hear my story and be like, no, that's the guy that fucked us over, whatever. But there's been so many people who have been at Sony. Someone's offered a record deal before. For Hopeless Heroic, there was offers from Sony. Other people who have been there have offered things, because it's new people come in all the time, and they don't really know or care what, And also, I think the story's been told, and it's not been told in a way of, like, Sony are the bad people, or any label are the bad people. It's the idea of, like, what the industry is built on. The industry is constantly behind the idea of what works, and it constantly screws over its people. The same way as, like, when I went and did a major label book deal, should have learned from, it's like, these again they're not writers. They're not people who understand what the process of you're going to go through, and digging everything out of yourself and putting it on a page and doing draft after draft after draft. They're just going to turn around and be like, oh no, we don't want this. Don't talk about this part. It's too heavy up front. It's like, that's my life you're telling me to take out there. Like, that's what you talk. So
I think that almost comes back to why you've got this, anti-capitalist outlook in life, because I think that a lot of the time in the industry that you've worked in, be it major label record labels or major label book companies or so, it's the people that are in the boardroom that are making these decisions that have never done the work on the ground. So who are they to tell you that your art is wrong?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's the same thing with, like, in theater and film and all these different places. It's like, it's this idea of the other person who's coming to you is always like a screenwriter will come to me and be like, I know how to write your story. And you're like, all right, let's see what you can do. And then it's just dreadful. It's just
it's your story. It's not their story.
It's like, what? You don't know anything about the story. Right. And it's but film companies, big film companies, a lot of them have come to me constantly. But big film companies, the major ones, will always come and be like, yeah, we want your deal, and this person's going to write it, and they'd have no care about what the story is. They just want it. They just want it, And so it's constantly dealing. When you're dealing in a kind of entertainment at a high level, you're constantly going to come across people who they got in because their fathers owned a company. Like, they never like grafted and understood, like, that's who you really want to work with. You want to work with people who are also writers, or also they've made their
and done it.
Yeah, and they understand the integrity of of a great story. You know, like they know that what it takes structurally to make a great story. For me, I can't understand how bad films get made or how bad things get made, and I can understand it only from the point of view of seeing it, that there's people in the teams who don't know what is actually going to work for people, you know, and who then try to strip out the real and put in the kind of gloss. And that's when, you know, I think if you look at like something like Fight Club, the gloss, there's no gloss. There's no such thing as gloss. And yet something so unreal as that ends up being so pertinently real. Yeah. You know? Oh. So I think that's the difference is artists take this journey towards discovering who they really are. And that's the journey of any artist, is like use your art to find as therapy, to find out who you are. Yeah. And then eventually tell your story and tell it in a beautiful way that like really represents the story for people. But then you got to find people to do that with. And that's always, you want to put your records out, put it out yourself until someone comes in who's honestly understands the pain you go through. Same with books, same with film. It's like, it's really, being in this industry is like, it's finding good people is the hardest thing, you know, honest, integral people. Just even some people would laugh as soon as they hear the words honest with entertainment industry, you know. Yeah. But that's the plight, you know, that I've been on. And luckily I've met a lot of good people, you know.
Where are you now? You know, you've been through it all. You've had some journey in your life, Gavin. Where are you as a person now? And is there anything that people should be looking forward from you in the future?
Right now, I'm trying so hard to get my right leg back. I'm doing physio every day. I still play football, and I haven't played football for 10 months, obviously because of the Worlds and COVID, but I haven't been able to run or train. So it's weird, these little things that you need. As an artist, I also use sport. I'll go and play football, and then I'll come home and just it pours out of me because of like, you know, and as an addictive personality, I've removed a lot of the things that I've been addicted to with positive things like my art and like sport. And so football is one of those things. So all I'm trying to do right now, I mean, I've got so many cool things happening this year, but all I really want to do is be able to kick a ball around, you know. But other than that, like I'm working on my 11th album. I'm working on an album telling the story along the beats of the film. I'm working on a screenplay I just finished a draft. I've made a few, but I've found the way to tell the story eventually. And so I've finished a really good draft of that. I've got a lot of people that we're working with on stage plays and video game. And like, there's so many things in this next year while I kind of just stay creative with music and tell this story, that it's just like, it's a really cool creative time. And then every now and then I'll just take breaks and write other stories and just try to be as much in the essence of who I am, which is this, you know, dedicated writer, and have as much fun doing that, you know.
Absolutely.
That's pretty much that's pretty much my life right now. And in the meantime, also trying get through COVID, and see people. God, it's like, it'd be so good to just see people again. Just have a good laugh with people.
It looks like it's going to be a while, doesn't it? It certainly doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon.
It does. It does look like a while. I haven't been to Scotland, and I haven't seen my family in Scotland for a while now, like over maybe a year and a half. And so it's like, it's real sad.
Yeah, totally. Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for speaking so open and honestly about your journey as well. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that people who haven't heard of Silibil N Brains will go and check out the film and the book as well, and check you out on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Everywhere at Brains McLeod. I'm not really on Twitter, to be honest. I actually don't really do social media as much. Like, I only really do it for promotion of like the story of music. But anyone can get me on Facebook, and anyone can get me on YouTube at the Brains McLeod. I constantly put up new music on YouTube/Brains McLeod and Silibil N Brains. I've like the whole entire catalog of like 10 albums is up on, you know, Spotify as well. So if you want to hear all the music, like the story kind of tells itself over 10 albums. So go in and and found that. And then if anyone is really passionate about music and learning how to do it and writing, then they can hit me up as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. And thanks to everyone who's listened to or watched this episode of the DW podcast. If you've not, please like and subscribe and check out some previous episodes. Cheers.